Hi, it's John Kelly. In this module, we are going to discuss the engagement letter. And as always, we want to be efficient and effective, follow professional standards, and document what we have done properly. Now, there's some matters we need to consider before we perhaps even decide to accept the engagement. Preconditions and scope limitations. For instance, we would want to check that it's possible to do an audit and that the preconditions for an audit are present. Also, we'd want to consider whether the client was planning on imposing any scope limitations that would make it impossible for us to do the audit, in which case we'd wish to decline the audit. And also we'd want to consider whether or not the client was changing the terms of the engagement in a way that was unacceptable. Also, there might be matters specified by law or regulation that need to be in the engagement letter. Now, the principle in this section about engagement letters is that for a new engagement, you'd get a letter right away, but annually thereafter, you would only consider whether or not it was necessary to remind the client of the terms of the engagement. So for the initial letter, it is to be in writing, and there is a list of items to include there in paragraph 210.10. Many firms go beyond the minimum things that are to be required, and you will see if you look at different engagement letters from different firms that there's a degree of consistency between the firms in the matters they cover in the engagement letter. Dating of the initial letter, well, of course, it should be as soon as possible after you obtain the engagement, and it's really preferable that it's obtained before the audit begins, just to make sure that the preconditions and things like that are acceptable. Recurring audits, the requirement in the standard is that annually you would assess whether or not circumstances have changed. And there's a list in A28 of changes that might cause you to want to reissue an engagement letter. If there were significant changes in the shareholders, for instance, or management, that might be a circumstance. And then you would decide that you needed to remind your client about the existing terms of the engagement and then do a new letter. Now, that said, many firms do annual engagement letters as a matter of practice. And that's probably something that's considered good practice. In the United States, an annual reminder is required. And as I said, many firms do the same thing. Dating the reminder letter, well, there's some variation there by firm. Some firms will pick a day, January the 2nd, and do every client on that day. So once a year, every client gets a new engagement letter. The efficiency issue there is you then have to spend some time making sure that everyone you sent a letter out to returns it. And it's not a time that the client is used to corresponding with you, so that may be some effort there to get those letters back. Other firms say, well, we're going to date the reminder letter as the same date as the current report date. We're sending out a representation letter. We're issuing a new audit report. We'll just issue an engagement letter at the same time and as of the same date. And that could be considered the reminder for the following year. And some will date their engagement letter as the date of the beginning of the audit. So that then is the reminder for this year. So variation by firm. What's important is that you get a letter every year. And the only documentation requirement is that it be in. So thanks for